As we expected, the FAA is finalizing and actually has finalized remote ID. So what does this mean? Stay tuned and we're going to talk about it. So guys, the FAA has released their final rule on remote ID, and I'm going to read a statement. It is kind of lengthy, but I think that if you're a drone hobbyist or a commercial pilot in the drone industry, you definitely need to pay attention because this is going to affect you. So here is the FAA news release. The U.S. Department of Transportation's Federal Aviation Administration today announced final rules for unmanned aircraft, commonly known as drones. The new rules require remote identification of drones and allow operators of small drones to fly over people and at night under certain conditions. These rules come at a time when drones represent the fastest growing segment in the entire transportation sector, with currently over 1.7 million drone registrations and 203,000 FAA certified remote pilots. Remote ID will help mitigate risks associated with expanded drone operations, such as flights over people and at night. And both rules support technological and operational innovation and advancements. These final rules carefully address safety, security, and privacy concerns while advancing opportunities for innovation and utilization of drone technology, said U.S. Secretary of Transportation Elaine L. Chao. Remote ID is a major step forward to the full integration of drones into the national airspace system. Remote ID provides identification of drones in flight as well as the location of their control stations, providing crucial information to our national security agencies and law enforcement partners, and other officials charged with ensuring public safety. Airspace awareness reduces the risk of drone interference with other aircraft and people and property on the ground. Equipping drones with remote ID technology builds on previous steps taken by the FAA and the drone industry to integrate operations safely into the national airspace system. Part 107 of the Federal Aviation Regulations currently prohibits covered drone operations over people and at night unless the operator obtains a waiver from the FAA. The new FAA regulations jointly provide increased flexibility to conduct certain small UAS operations without obtaining a waiver. The new rules make way for further integration of drones into our airspace by addressing safety and security concerns, said FAA Administrator Steve Dickinson. They get us closer to the day when we will be more routinely seeing drone operations such as the delivery of packages. The remote ID rule applies to all operations of drones that require FAA registration. There are 3 ways to comply with operational requirements. Operate a standard remote ID drone that broadcasts identification and location information of the drone and control station. In other words, they are basically saying your drone is going to be able to be tracked in real time, and where you are standing operating the drone is going to be able to be tracked in real time as well. Let's continue. Operate a drone with a remote ID broadcast module, maybe a separate device attached to the drone, which broadcasts identification, location, and takeoff information. Or 3, operate a drone without remote ID, but at a specific FAA recognized identification areas. So this means that if your drone or a model aircraft or whatever it might be, if that does not allow tracking, then you are going to have to fly now at a designated FAA location. The operations over people and at night rule applies to Part 107 operators. The ability to fly over people and moving vehicles varies depending on the level of risk of a small drone operation presents to people on the ground. Operations are permitted based on 4 categories, which can be found in the executive summary. Additionally, this rule allows for operations at night under certain conditions. The final rule requires that small drone operations have their remote pilot certificate and identification in their physical possession when operating, ready to present to authorities if needed. The rule also expands the class of authorities who may request these forms from a remote pilot. The final rule replaces the requirement to complete a recurrent test every 24 calendar months with the requirement to complete updated recurrent training that includes operating at night in identified subject areas. Both rules will become effective 60 days after publication in the Federal Register. The remote ID rule includes 2 compliance dates. Drone manufacturers will have 18 months to begin producing drones with remote ID, with operators having an additional year to start using drones with remote ID. So in other words, this rule goes into place soon, within 60 days, but you're going to have drone manufacturers like DJI are going to have 18 months to implement remote ID, and operators that are flying with like custom aircraft are going to have a year to start using remote ID. Sorry, I don't know why that was so hard to say. So in other words, you're going to be tracked when you're flying your drone. And you're basically allowed to fly your drone as you do right now, but you're going to be tracked. So this poses some interesting questions. First, my question is what if you're flying in an area with no cell phone connectivity or service? Are you still going to be able to fly your drone? That's going to be an interesting question to have answered. And I'm sure there's other questions that I'll think of throughout this video, but let me talk for a little bit about my thoughts. The rule is well-meaning in some areas, but in other areas not. So let me explain. The areas where it's not well-meaning is I believe this rule was put into place by large corporations like Amazon, and even, you know, companies like FedEx and USPS that want to start doing drone delivery. So now, since the corporations have sent their lobbyists to Washington, D.C., now they get to have their, they get free reign of the sky, basically. They get to fly their drones over people, over cars at night. Meanwhile, people like us, I do this for a living. I fly drones commercially, but I also fly for hobby, and people like us are, in my eyes, kind of being punished. We're kind of losing rights of privacy, especially, if you live next to a crazy neighbor. Now they can track you and see exactly where your drone is flying in real time. They can see where you're standing in real time. You're flying a $2,000 drone in the sky. You might not really want people knowing where you are standing operating that drone. But the well-meaning parts of this rule, it does improve safety. We've seen a lot of reckless behavior with drones. For example, that guy, I can't remember his name, but he flew his drone near those military aircraft during this flyover in Detroit. His drone came very close to those aircraft, and we see a lot of reckless flying. So that's probably also why we're seeing rules like this too, because people in the community haven't really been doing their part 100%. A cool thing that I like about this rule for commercial drone pilots is now the recurrent test can be done at home online. So you no longer have to schedule the recurrent test, go in and actually take it. Now it can be done online. That is awesome news. I actually have taken my recurrent test in person. So I've experienced, taking the original test in person, like everybody has to, and taking the recurrent test in person, but now that is no longer needed, so that's honestly great news. And it's also good news that now professionals don't have to get the FAA waivers to fly at night for jobs. That definitely opens up the door for what my business can do. I've actually had to turn down jobs in the past because they've requested me to fly at night, and that is against the law. You can't do that, but now you can. And then you can fly over people, but you have to have the propellers enclosed. They can't be open, because if the drone crashes, the person can't be cut by the propellers. So that was one of the requirements there. You're also allowed to fly over cars now, but you have to be very vigilant as to how you're flying over cars. Say there's a roadway and there's cars driving by, you can fly over that roadway, but you can't fly over that roadway, over the cars for an extended period of time. What that basically means is you can quickly fly over cars if need be, but you just can't track them and fly over them on a highway or something like that. So that's all good, and I like to see that. But the remote ID stuff and the cracking down on tracking people, that is kind of scary to me. So I personally don't think a lot of people are tech savvy enough to pull out their phone and track drone pilots like that, but I could be wrong. This could be used as like a weapon against drone pilots. So I'm curious to know your thoughts about the new rule. I'm sure I missed certain things, but I tried to do a general coverage of the rule. It's pretty crazy that it's finalized and that we're actually seeing it start implementation here into 2021. So definitely let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. And if you like today's video, definitely hit the thumbs up, and also make sure to hit the subscribe button and notification bell. That way you're updated when I create new videos. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.